Okay, so in this video on mission, we're going to look at this spec point here. So the mission of the church, developments in Christian ideas of mission from the early 20th century to the present day. So the key thing there is that they want you to look at developments in Christian ideas of mission. So that's something to note. And also that the time period that we're looking at, we can obviously have some idea of the kind of background to mission, but what we mainly need to prioritise is the early 20th century to the present day. So the idea of mission has its origins, of course, in the Great Commission. So this is the final instruction that Jesus gave to his disciples before his ascension. Let's have a look at the text now. So it says, "The 11 disciples went to Galilee to the mountain where Jesus had told them to go. When they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. Then Jesus came to them and said, 'All authority in heaven and earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age.'" So the first thing that I want you to note here is that there's loads of important and relevant material just in this excerpt from the Bible. So firstly, we have Jesus speaking to his disciples saying, "All authority in heaven and earth has been given to me." So obviously when you're talking about the authority of Jesus topic, that's a really relevant and pertinent textual reference to include. We then have Jesus commanding his disciples to go and make disciples of all the nations. So to go out, spread the word, make followers of Jesus across the world, essentially. He also commands that they should be baptizing people, so baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So that's important in terms of baptism as well. And of course, also we have reference to the Trinity there, the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So it's a really important, really helpful excerpt from the Bible, this one. So this Great Commission is the last instruction given from Jesus to his disciples before his ascension. Clearly, as we've said, Jesus affirms that he has all authority. He instructs his disciples to go out into the world, to teach others what they've been taught, to baptize people, and to bring them to an understanding of God. The Gospel of John also includes a similar instruction as Jesus says to his disciples, "As the Father has sent me, so I send you." So this idea of mission really stems back to this extract from the Bible and these ideas in the Bible that stem from the Great Commission. So another key text actually in understanding the concept of mission is the parable of the sheep and the goats. So in this, Jesus very clearly sets out how people are expected to help others who are in need. And he also affirms that people need to put the command to love your neighbour into practice. So here we have kind of two very important texts that underpin the idea of mission. There's the mission to go out and minister to the world, the mission to baptize people and bring them to God, and also the mission to help people who are in need. So in the parable of the sheep and the goats, Jesus says, "I was hungry and you gave me something to drink." No, "I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, you invited me in. I needed clothes and you clothed me. I was sick, you looked after me. I was in prison and you came to visit me." So here he is teaching that people, however they treat other people, it's as if they are treating Jesus in that way. So it's important. There's a mission there to take care of the hungry, the thirsty, the strangers, those who haven't got essentially what they need. So mission, as we've just seen, really sits at the heart of Christian identity. It's linked directly to the teachings and commands given by Jesus, both at the Great Commission and then also in the parable of the sheep and the goats, for example. Although different denominations within Christianity approach mission from different perspectives, it is one of the key foundations of the Christian faith. And there are really three key ways in which Christians have aimed to move and work towards the goal of mission over the past 100 years, so considering the kind of context that's set out by the exam board. Those three ways are mission as evangelism, mission to those affected by poverty, and mission to the Christian community. And for each one, we're going to have a look now at how that has developed, because that's the key word in the spec point here, developments in the Christian ideas of mission. So mission as evangelism is really the most obvious and most traditional way to understand mission, and it can be traced right back to Jesus saying, "Go make disciples of all the nations." It can also be seen right back in the writings of St. Paul, who we know, from his work that he travelled around the Mediterranean, he visited lots of communities, he told them all about Jesus. Paul kept in touch with those communities by writing letters to them, and many of those are included in the New Testament. In these letters, Paul really shows the idea of mission as evangelism. He teaches his readers about Christian beliefs and doctrine and tries to encourage them to develop their beliefs further. So many Christians in modern times have continued to prioritise mission as evangelism, and they see the work of Paul as almost like a pattern for that. So one example of a group that carries out this form of mission is the Christian Missionary Society. This was established back in 1812, but it continues to thrive today. So in the past, missionary workers were sent all over the world to places as far afield as New Zealand, the Pacific Islands, India, and Japan, and their goal was to teach people about Christianity, following Jesus' command to go forth, make disciples of all the nations. Missionaries set up churches, and they also offered local people healthcare and education. Now, during the 20th century, which is the time period that we're interested in terms of the spec, the Christian Missionary Society continued this work and looked to make connections between churches in the UK and partner churches around the world. The idea was that the UK churches would then communicate with their partner church through letters, and they would also support the work of their partner church through prayer and donations. In more recent years, the Christian Missionary Society has started to work towards supporting churches that are already established. They're helping to run outreach projects that support the faith and the basic needs of those Christians who are living in challenging circumstances. So there you can see something of a development. Initially, the goal was to set up new churches and to bring people to Christianity. In recent years, the focus has shifted towards supporting the existing communities that exist. Second form of mission that we're going to talk about now is the mission to those affected or afflicted by poverty. So inspired by Jesus' teachings about agapeic love and other teachings that emphasize the need to care for those in need, many Christians see that first and primary mission as one to provide practical support. So in the late 19th century, so moving into the 20th century and the context that's set out by the exam board, the Children's Society was set up in London to care for children who were orphaned at a young age as a result of poverty and illness, especially within the working classes. So this is important because it was a scheme supported by the Church of England. It was a really good example of specific mission to those affected by poverty in the UK context, within the time period that the exam board is interested in. So in this scheme that was supported by the Church of England, cottage homes were set up where orphaned and homeless children could live under the care of a matron. Now that developed through the 20th century, and then by the 1970s, the focus of the Children's Society had to change because the numbers of orphaned and homeless children was in decline, primarily due to improvements within local authorities and the social services that they could provide. So since that point, the Children's Society has actually been working with young people and their families in different ways. So they work with families that face struggles around illness, stress and poverty. They provide daycare facilities, counselling, lots of practical on-the-ground support. So a second example of an organisation that lives out this mission is Christian Aid. This was set up in 1945 to care for refugees after the war. So they raised around £3 million in today's money for those whose lives have been torn apart by war. Over the past 75 years, though, over the course of the 20th century to the modern day, again, their mission has developed. That over the past 70 years, the work of Christian Aid has evolved from being to care for refugees post-war to caring for people in many different countries who are facing problems caused by climate change, long-term systemic poverty. They provide disaster relief. So on their website, Christian Aid actually make the following statement, which sums up what their mission really is. And I think this is a really relevant and helpful thing for us to look at. So this is what Christian Aid sets out. Everyone is equal in the sight of God, yet we live in a world where poverty still persists. Poverty is an outrage against humanity. It robs people of their dignity and lets injustice thrive. But together we have the power to transform lives. For over 70 years, we've been standing with the poorest of our neighbours. We work in 37 countries with people of all faiths and none to stand up for dignity, equality and justice. Together we can create a world where everyone can live a full life, free from poverty. Our voices and actions are stronger together, and with your help we can make an even bigger difference. So you can see how the focus has changed from post-war being just, on the ground caring for the refugees that were caused to be homeless and to be in need from the war, to now working to try and stand up for dignity, equality and justice, so to bring about the systemic changes in countries where people really need help. Lastly, the third prong of mission, if you like, is the mission to the Christian community. So all Christian churches recognise the importance of caring for Christians in the local community as part of their mission. At the start of the 20th century, most people in the UK were Christian and they attended church on a regular basis. So that meant that churches needed to be paid for and built, and priests and ministers needed to be trained and then paid. There was a particular need to recruit priests to inner city and less affluent areas to ensure that new churches could provide for the needs of the growing population. So at the start of the 20th century, that was what the mission to the Christian community looked like. It has, in recent years, however, had to develop. There's been a really big push towards ecumenism in the UK. And this is a movement that encourages different Christian denominations to work together, to share facilities and to hold joint services. Now this has become really more prevalent as the numbers of people actively attending church has declined, and that's made the position of many smaller churches unsustainable. Over the past few years, there's also been new movements within Christianity looking to appeal to a new audience through initiatives such as Messy Church, cafe churches, and that's connected to a movement known as Fresh Expressions. Now, in addition to evangelism overseas, it's also important to note that the mission to the Christian community also includes a focus on trying to bring people back to the faith. This is important because falling church attendance and the rise in secularism has actually led to a really sharp number in terms of decline in Christianity. You can see from this infographic here at the side, and this, unfortunately is already a few years out of date, but the numbers of Christians in the UK since 1983 has sharply declined. So we're around a third now of people in the UK who identify as Christian, whereas back in the 1980s it was 2/3 of the population. So there's a really sharp need, if you like, for Christianity to reach out to new people and to try and encourage people to come back to the church, because the numbers don't make pretty reading for them really. So one example of a organisation or a movement that's been developed to try and respond to this and a way to mission to the community is the Alpha course. So this was devised in the late 1970s as a tool for Christian evangelism. It's spread across the UK, many churches run the course, it's also available completely online now. The idea is that it provides people with an opportunity to learn more about Christianity in a supportive, more informal setting. The rationale behind this too is to try and bring people back to the church. So people who maybe were christened, baptised when they were little, when they were children, and just have never really engaged in Christianity. The Alpha course is an opportunity for them to maybe learn about Christianity in a very open, very friendly, non-committal kind of a way. So it's certainly a useful organisation, a useful movement to know about in terms of understanding how the focus of mission has developed. So I would really recommend that you have a look online, have a look at some of their videos, have a look at some of their resources, just to give you a flavour of what they're trying to do and what the kind of tone of the materials is. That's, again, really helpful in understanding how mission has developed within the UK context.